What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to your creative unconscious reading for July 9th. We are going to dive right on in. So in terms of themes, as we do, we think of themes, we work through them here. The theme that came up and that today, for a lot of people, thankfully I have access to internet, but in Canada there was a sort of telecom outage. So a lot of people didn't have access to cell phones, still don't. I know I do not. So a lot of people's main ways of communicating with one another, even, interact, so debit systems were down, 911 stuff was not working. It's been kind of like a day of super disconnect. And it just, one of the themes that came up today, and that's just been coming up in the past couple of days, is just community. And, most of you know I'm quite proud of talking about this. I do work in the public library system. And it's something that today in particular, I saw was very powerful. Because, people might say like that public libraries don't really have a place, that they're like this dying space, but I can tell you that it was alive today. And it was really comforting to see that one of the few places that people could come, because a lot of people were, crowding Starbucks or Tim Hortons or restaurants and things to use the Wi-Fi, but people could just come to the library and be. And it was really amazing to watch, people, one person would sit at a table with two chairs, and that one person would sit and then they would welcome somebody else. So it was this sense of community and opening up. And, it's just a testament to one of the last few places that you can encounter people with absolutely no pretense or agenda or, dollar amounts. Like you could just come and be, and just the creativity and innovation that can come from that, because it means that you get to show up as you without any extra stuff brought with it. So that to me was just such a powerful rendering of community and possibility. And those kinds of spaces I feel are going to become more and more important. Again, I'm biased because I work in that space and I love it so much. There's something so special about that. But I was just, meditating on the way home. It was a very busy day because we had so many people who were what I guess typically work from home. And then, they came to our doors. But it was a busy day. But I kept thinking on the way home, there's going to be probably like this, where do you find yourself in other people? And where's that open, pretenseless place that you can just be and meet people? And not people as in like going out to classes or things like that, but just... where do you allow yourself to be met by others as much as you meet them? So it was just a really interesting day to watch. And so that was just something I meditated on while I was on my way home today. And just thinking about how connected we are. Yes. And what happens when traditional methods of connection and, not fade away, but just are challenged by access to technology. And what happens when we are faced with the analog of our heart, right? With the analog of connection, and how we do those things without technology. So it was just something that I'm meditating on in terms of community. And that's what kind of came through. And I think the creative capacity for community, when we come together in curiosity, when we come together in wonder, when we come together in spaces and places where we don't have to be anything other than ourselves. We don't have to be something that we purchase. We don't have to be that, 333 on the time. We can come together in a way that is creative, because we don't have to, there's no price of admission other than just showing up. And what a beautiful thing to show up just as you in that space, right? So that was something that I was just thinking about on the way home, and not just in terms of the actual spatialization of that feeling of both receptivity and giving, that equilibrium in meeting others in where you are and where they are, and all of the possibility that comes from that, but also just the ways that we do that energetically. So we're going to dive in and see where this takes us. It was, there's a customer that also brought in food for us, which was delightful. So it was fantastic. It was an amazing day. Felt a little bit like a movie. But we are going to dive in. So I would like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. So... Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative unconscious collective? 6 of Pentacles. it's like a balance, like an even give and take. Something along those lines. 9 of Wands. Ooh, Ace of Swords. And the 3 of Wands. One on the bottom was the King of Swords. Okay. So I think that what you need to know right now is I feel like there's this sense of collective equilibrium seeking. Collective equilibrium seeking, not just because like basically cell service and like connectivity for the majority, like across Canada cut out in a way, but it's almost like this sort of what I'm thinking of here, this is so, I don't know, I'm like reliving my best like preteen life, but I was thinking about in Super Mario. So I was looking at this and what came to mind was acts of self-creation, right? So acts of self-creation, but then what also came to mind was when I was a kid, I used to play Super Mario, so Super Nintendo, so Super Mario World with my dad and my brother, and we would spend like hours trying to get through all these levels and do all this stuff. And I just thought, I saw these circling when I thought about self-creation. I thought about all of the lives that we would lose trying to get to the special secret levels and unlocking them, and just the way that built such a bond, right? So to the point where I got the Donkey Kong Country 3 like playbook that Nintendo Power, this old magazine, used to put out. That was given to me as a gift. It meant so much to me because my dad and my brother and I would spend hours poring over the pages, like mapping out how we were going to get to each level and at what specific point we had to hit specific buttons. Like it was just so intense. And it's almost like this, like the lives lost didn't matter because the life that we gained in the experience of it was so much more. And I almost feel like we're reaching a point like that collectively. Not just because of all of the, connectivity issues today in Canada, but just broadly speaking, like we're reaching this sort of point where it's like the cycle is, I don't know that it will change or shift that significantly. I think that we're changing and shifting. And I almost feel like that's what's happening here. Like all of the small, like the little, I want to say like little lives, like the lives in the video game, right? The simulation, like the lives that we lose there. But then this bigger life that it gives us and the ways that it grows us and connects us to something so much more. I know that's not the traditional Six of Pentacles meaning, but I do an intuitive reading of the cards as well as what they mean. And I'm just getting this, like, it's like small acts of self-creation that bring things into balance, that bring yourself into balance. The energy to embrace is this 9 of Wands. So to me, I'm getting that it's sort of like, I think this is like a reflection on I want to say how far we've come, but not in the sense of like nostalgia and all of that. It's like how, like, it's almost like releasing the sheath, like releasing your grip on this sword, releasing a grip on the truth. The title of there's a Carlo, I think his name is Carlo Rovelli. The book is like, there are some places where kindness is more important than the rules, and something along those lines. And it's almost like your truth, like what is your truth and how you own that, and own it just in the sense that like, this is what we're releasing. And it's like releasing the truth. And this is not just the truth as in personal truths, but I think this is also where it's like releasing the need to, I don't know, it's, how do I word this, energy, spirit? I'm hearing zero-sum game, like releasing the need to see life as a zero-sum game. And not life, that sounds so big, like release the need to see life in that way. And no. It's more so that it's like releasing the idea that protects you, releasing the idea that that's something that is like a defense mechanism. Because I'm almost getting this energy in the way that this is presented here, where it's like this mirrored energy. It's like this illusion where it's like you really only have one wand that matters, but it's like all of the stuff that doesn't is like operating in the background in this way that's just making noise because it's reflecting off of what you think matters. And like the, water representing like intuition and emotion, the way that it's all reflecting this stuff back, but it's like there's one wand, this inspired way, this inspired thing is what you're operating from. but there's something that's just getting lost in translation of this noise. Um, and I mean, the King of Wands does represent Aquarian energy, which is about community, right? So that to me, like this does track. 1010 was just on the time. Um, yeah. And I feel like this Nine of Wands it's like you don't, like, what are you, is your truth something that you're living by and that is inspiring your living in terms of this Ace of Wands? Or is it something that you're using as a defense? And that like I'm almost getting this like inward facing like club where it's like you can put the club down, like, right. But again, like I know what it means to have, like people deny your truth or just to see you as small or incapable or not valuable or important. So it's like that truth can operate in that way, right? It can operate in a way that it's not that it becomes a shield to keep people out. It's because you get what boundaries are confused, right? You get boundaries fundamentally mixed up along the way. And instead of seeing boundaries as something that's just part of your energy, you think that you have to put in a ton of effort to fortify them or to tend to them, which isn't wrong, but it's also just the work, right? Like 11:11 on the time. If you're putting in the work into yourself and knowing you, and like it works differently. I think it works differently. And then the Three of Wands here. So I think so we're releasing a grip on the truth in this way, because then it's like I'm almost seeing this as like a bog in like a marshy area where you can't really, it's like you put the sword in. So for example, in tomorrow's affirmations, I went to the Bruce Trail, is this huge trail network in Ontario, in southern Ontario, and it starts up at Tobermory, and then it goes all the way down the Niagara Escarpment. And I went to one of the spots along there on a hike last weekend. I think I want to say last weekend. Anyways, and there was this bog area where all these frogs were just hanging out in the mud, and it was really cute. I was watching them. I'm like, oh man, these guys are so adorable. Like it was lovely. And I thought, like that if it like they're so tiny, so they can just chill in this mud, but you could see it was like bog like mud. So if you stepped in it, because it was part of this like marshy area, so you would probably, it would operate like quicksand, right? But it's almost like that's what this is. Like it's a truth, but it's like it's sinking under the weight, because the truth is not being, like, your truth is not, is it, I'm hearing it like, it's like it's not applied. It's like the environment, the truth in the environment, maybe, the truth in the landscape ecosystem. Thank you so much, Spirit. The truth that you're wielding in the ecosystem that you're trying to grow it in. It's like it's just sticking to this instead of, like feeling like you're cutting through air, or it's like smooth movements. It keeps getting stuck on the way down in this like thick, dense environment, because it's like not where it's supposed to be. That's not where it thrives. Something along those lines. But I mean, again, if we think about this collectively, this is so applicable, because this is like, we look out into the world and like, what truths matter to us the most? What truths matter to us, to all of us, in a way that elevates all of us, that doesn't just elevate like one group of people, right? Like I think back to being at work today and just how incredible it was. And, people might say, well, you can't buy anything in libraries. They're a threat to the market, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but they're also the brightest spot in a world where we prioritize people as somebody that can purchase this thing, or we see people as like a dollar sign or a means to an end. And, I find that in space, where's the last space? I said it before and I'll say it again. There was an author that said one of the last places that you can just go and sit and not be expected to purchase anything or to be anyone other than yourself: hospitals and libraries. Anywhere else there's a price of admission, and that's okay. Like we often opt into those things. We understand that that's what those spaces are like. But how important is it to just be, I mean, even if you park your car at the side of the road in a wrong area, someone will question you as to what you're doing there, right? So even nature in a way has become a place where, especially for Indigenous folks, and racialized folks too. Well, racialized is such a weird way of wording it, because it's like then it takes whiteness and says whiteness isn't a race, when it indeed is, right? So it's like, linguistically speaking, it's a trick of the light that really just reinforces things. But nonetheless, like even in nature, we can't just have these spaces, right? So it's almost like the truths that we're valuing collectively, like how are we applying them? How are we applying them in a way that elevates everyone? And that seems so lofty a goal. I know, like that's, it's like the aspirational more than vision statement or mission statement things even. But I feel like it's the last place without pretense on the planet. And like, how are we investing in those spaces? Number one. But number two, I feel like there's something about the truth here, and like how are we, we're creating and recreating ourselves all the time, right? So when's the last place or space that you allowed yourself to be? And if you feel like even, if you go into a store and just sit, they'd probably be like, what the F are you doing? Right? So it's like some spaces you can, like some green spaces and things like that, you can absolutely do that. But there's also this aspect of like, what places can you go without feeling like I don't know how to word this, where you're able to show up so that your sword is allowed to thrive. Like I almost see this as like a plant, like I'm seeing roots growing, like your truth, like where's your truth sprouting roots and anchoring in to something? How are you able to grow in your truth, and not just like little T truths, but like capital T truths, the ones that you decide for yourself, right? What environments are they? Environments of creation and self-creation, or are they environments where it's like the truth has become sort of twisted and is a defense because you feel like you're surrounded, almost like you have to defend this Ace of Wands, these ideas. And I think the story, like how the light gets in, is the Three of Wands here. And it's like, I feel like it's like the light is coming regardless of what we do. And that sounds so like biblical, like, but it's like the light is coming regardless of what we do. So how do we want to do that? Do we want to do this in a way that elevates folks, or do we want to do this in a way that, puts people under? Like, how are we living up to what our collective potential, and not potential as in you can produce all these wonderful things, like ding, right? Like it's not like that. It's like, how are we collectively answering to all of these truths? Are we placing these truths in environments where they can't thrive? Are we placing these truths in terms of what we value in places where they can't thrive? And then are we upset that this balance hasn't shown up? So it's like this it's like collective restructuring, I guess. Collective restructuring. That's interesting. Spirit, what messages can you clarify these messages for my daily creatives? And by daily creatives, whoopsies, joking, I mean my creative unconscious collective, please. So we have the Three of Swords, Justice, Six of Pentacles, and the Ace of Cups. So I'm getting here that I'm hearing the song Broken Hearted by Carmen, Karmin. I don't know why. I haven't heard those lyrics in a long time. Maybe that's like, I'm getting that it's sort of this like song and dance that we do when we look at systems, like something about it's the way that they've like disappointed, right? And then this Justice card tells me that there's this truth that we're realizing and then doing something about that, which is again super broad. What does that even mean in the practicality of every day, right? Like, what does that actually mean? I also see justice as cause and effect, right? Justice, the minor arcana reflection of it, I've come to understand as the Ace of Swords and the Two of Swords, cause and effect. Ace, cause, Two of Swords, effect. And I feel like this is sort of like, it's almost like a chain, there's like a chain that's affected here. Yeah, Six of Pentacles showing up again. But it's almost like things are being righted, and there's this opening of a heart. And this could be like, if you take this like into a sort of microcosm, into the micro from the macro, this could just be like, speaking to the ways that we let justice be done, and not in terms of like, I will do justice, like it's not like the act of it itself. Oh, my cat might be coming through here. She's assessing the situation. But I'm just getting this way that it's like there's some kind of tipping of the scales in the right direction. And right direction just meaning in a way that reaches for the right environment for these truths to be planted. The right environment. And this Ace of Cups too, like I feel like This speaks to the heart space, and it's new opportunities, but it's almost like new opportunities to plant these seeds in a way that allows them to grow. Like it's in being planted in the right environment for them, and it's like being overseen by, this could be benevolent ancestors, or I mean benevolent ancestors as if there was anything else. Oh my gosh. But you know what I mean, like, but this like benevolent keeper of them. And it's like this, they're being watched over, and it's like it was sprouting from this, like that's what grew. Like I'm seeing this as almost being like the mud in the bog, right? Like that sort of environment where it's like this very little life could survive, but yet these brilliant, vibrant frogs that had so many stories to tell were able to. That's their hangout, right? Like that's their jam. So it's almost like planting seeds in the right environments, and it's just like this, like beautiful. I'm seeing cellophane wrapping, like taking the cellophane wrapping off of the heart space. It's like it was wrapped up, and it's like maybe at one point it was supposed to be like a gift, and you wrapped it up or something like that, and it was clear, so people were like, "Oh, that's a nice heart space," but it was like in cellophane the whole fucking time. So like, how could you, right? So it's like what I just saw was it being taken, like pulled away, so that it was like the actual heart space unfettered by something. There was no barrier in between, and not barrier is in a wall, because is cellophane really a wall, right? Like it's almost like this trick of the light. Yeah. So it's like seeds are being planted in the right way. And it's almost like it's happening at such a subtle energetic level that if somebody were to say like, oh, well, how do we act upon this? And how do we do these things? And how do we, engage that energy in a way that helps people? I feel like it's like there's not a lot to do, because as who we are changes collectively because of a whole bunch of different things. It's like those things are just going to fall into place, because we're seeing now that there's like, Glennon Doyle talked about it as like she was texting her sister, and she posted this, and I've shared this before, but they talked about it being like the great backslide, and that's like what we're living in. And I feel like that's one way to look at it. It's one way to certainly mobilize energies. And I think the add-on could be that it's like we're living in an era of like the redefinition, the reconfiguration. It could be the backslide, but that they're both kind of the same thing, right? 2 on the time. It's like this reconfiguration energy, where it's like, is it, angering at times and exhausting? Yes, it is. It can be quite so, but simultaneously there's this birthing energy that we're tapping into. And I feel like whether we realize it or not, the seeds that are being planted right now are ones that they won't just be legislated away. They won't just be X, Y, and Z thing. And it's a long take, right? Like it's like thinking longer term than what we're probably used to, because, the pandemic was very much like short term, hurry up and wait. And I think, too, that with the pandemic, it was a lot of short-term thinking because of, health things and whatnot, where it like kind of necessitated this shorter-term visioning, because we didn't know, like it was very much chunks of small time. So we weren't necessarily thinking in the same way. But if you think about it in those terms, and think about it in an era, like what era are you living in? What era is your heart in? What era are you in personally? And looking at how that energy is being mobilized and what that represents too. So if we're in an era of reconfiguration, are we using our energy in a way that is I want to say suitable for the container, but it's just like, if we are trying to if we're trying to do something that the energy isn't meant to do yet, does that mean that we're working harder at something that we could be working, far harder, like, less smarter than harder? Like what I'm saying is like working smarter than harder with energy right now, in terms of like this collective orientation. Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, please? 5 of Swords, Page of Swords. I feel like it is something that we can easily lose ourselves in mentally, because it's a lot of mental constructs, right? Like it's a lot of mental constructs. The Hanged Man, yeah, again, right? Like it's this slow enlightenment, 9 of Swords and the 6 of Swords. So it's like thoughts, like we're processing so much collectively. We really, really are. And the Five of Swords tends to represent this win at all cost card. And I feel like that's like the way that we've been doing things up to this point, right? Like, think about it. It's not that your contributions, this is where I go back to the idea. I'm hearing zero sum game again. And I think about spaces and the ways that we use them. When's the last space that you didn't have to, like, there wasn't a winner or loser and you could just go and be? When's the last time that you allowed yourself to be in spaces where that was the case, right? I love going out in nature because of that, because it's just one of those places where there are fundamentally, like, in terms of survival, yes, but the ways that we are used to operating in terms of seeing things as like, I do this and this is how I win, that rule doesn't apply the same. The system that upholds our everyday doesn't operate the same in nature. It's very different. And it's like stepping outside of that and seeing it for what it was. Seeing it for what it was. But I feel like there's like a sense of exhaustion with this too. Like and it's like, this is where we're starting to get an idea. We're starting to get ideas of something new. We're starting to get ideas of what are the alternatives, and giving it time to sink in. As well as just moving with the worry, being moved by the worry. So thank you so much, Spirit. Oh my goodness. Because I'm moving with the Six of Swords, but it's like being moved by the worry, but in a direction that's helpful to us, that's healing to us, that brings us together and moves us towards something, right? There's also the white dove that I see here as well, which tends to represent peace. But I also feel like it's just like this sort of, I'm hearing the song, one of these things is not like the others. So it could just be that you have a thought that you haven't, like there's something you haven't been trusting, that you need to trust more. Perhaps that you need to trust more. Spirit, what other messages do you have for my creative unconscious collective to clarify this Ace of Swords? I'm seeing a deer walking through the woods. I'm seeing there's a deer walking through the woods. It's dawn. It's very misty. And what just came to mind was how in that quiet space, which I've been in before, and watching the deer, like it's stepping on a twig and it's snapping and it startles itself, but then it just goes back and doesn't see you. So it's almost like there's something that you're just observing happening around you right now. It could be. Or it's just this sort of gentle receptivity where you're allowing yourself to observe so carefully that it's not even like your presence that would typically sort of tip off the inhabitants of the woods that you're there. It's like you're learning to move in a new rhythm. You're moving in a new rhythm. And it's sort of this way that it's in harmony with the ecosystem that you're around and with. Ace of Swords, Four of Pentacles, Ace of Pentacles, King of Cups, Ten of Wands, Knight of Wands, sorry, King of Wands. No. So I don't know what was with that laugh. But so we have the Four of Pentacles and the Ace of Pentacles. Now, interestingly, together, there's the way that this represents the Five of Pentacles, and I will tell you how. It's really beautiful. So the Five of Pentacles represents feeling left out in the cold, but this is almost like where you're before the left out in the cold happens. It's like there's this pattern interrupt here, and it's related to this truth. By not planting your seeds of truth, your seeds of intention, it's like finding the right place, like not going to the fucking hardware store for milk anymore. What be that? So, oh my gosh, now I feel like I'm getting fired up. Let me just, but it's like I know I'm like rolling up my sleeves here, like this community organizer's pissed. No, I'm kidding. But it's like this way that like we can plant seeds of intention and truth in things that it's like going to the hardware store for milk. That's what I keep hearing. Because we know that the ways that systems have worked before, that they don't. So it's like what replaces them, and how do we work towards that in a way that is uplifting? How do we work towards that in a way that uplifts people and helps them? Like it helps them, not in a way that's like generic, like let me bring you a warm meal and a hug, but like let me help to, reframe X, Y, and Z thing, or allow me to like, let's change this together. Let's help together. Like, allowing people to sit at your table, even if it's a table for two and you don't know the person, letting them sit there and work because it's just a fucking table. Pardon my language. I'm swearing a lot tonight. Oh my goodness. I'm fired up. But it's just like recognizing that, like, it's just a table. And if you're just working there, why is somebody else's presence so upsetting? Because we've been taught this Five of Swords mentality where it's just like we can't have other people around when we're in that place. Like I don't know, it's not even about extending the table. It is that fundamentally, but it's like meeting us at the table for two, meeting us at those tables for two, and getting us into, in those spaces where we feel like we are, where it's like, well, I have this chair and it's mine because I'm sitting here, instead of saying, I have a spot you can sit, just come, just join, it's fine. And there was almost this, today there was this recognition, like people weren't talking, like they weren't having BFF conversations. It was just the gesture of it where someone said, here, I have something that meets your need, have a seat, right? It was just that fundamental thing that is missing so much of the time out in the world. When we see it, it's like, what a random act of kindness. And it's like, no, that's like the whole thing. The random acts of kindness are the whole thing. And the random acts of kindness, it's like these truths that we have that we value so much, but they become these random acts because we plant them in places that are so inhospitable to them that when they sprout up against all odds, somehow we look at them and say, damn, I'm so glad that that's there because it reminds me of hope. But why not just make hope the thing that makes us feel hopeful, the things that make us feel like that sense of like, wow, people really do care. Why aren't we moving towards that as the model, right? And that community care, mutual aid, that I've talked about this in other videos. I feel like we are moving towards that, not just as from a place of kind gestures, but more from a place of like genuinely helpful community. And what community means is not just these are the people that I know live in this radius, in this postal code or zip code if you're in the US. And it's like, I don't know what it's called elsewhere, so forgive me, but it's like, not just like people in your neighborhood that you see every once in a while, but like, I don't know, what does it mean and how are we defining it? Because you don't have to befriend everybody, nor do you have to feel obligated to everybody. But that's also a misapplication of the same kindness and care, right? Because kindness and care also come with the ability to say, no, thank you, and have that be respected without, yeah. But that's where I feel like this sort of, it's like your heart is more open to this. And I feel like not just you personally, whatever it is you're facing, take the macro and turn it to the micro if you wanted to with this. Let me do this so that you can see that better. There we go. So take it to the micro if you want, right? From the macro. But I feel like on a macro level, the King of Cups represents this way that we're becoming more open and receptive to these ideas because it's like a time of exacerbated effect. It is what we're really living in. And it's almost like this way that power has been used and applied unevenly. And like that's just, when we think about market rationalities and things like that, because I have read Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. It was a delightful book, but you can see how far things like that have deviated from what the original conception was, which is often the case, right? That's what happens when things are hundreds of years old, and then we look to them and then we're like, how the hell did we get here? But I feel like that's what we're kind of getting into in this place where we're more engaged, more receptive. Receptivity is more the King of Cups, but I feel like this is like a passionate receptivity. I feel like this is the excited 3 on the time. It's like this excited engagement with the world around us, not because of all of the things that, not from this like it's like a hot and passionate place. Like it's not like that. It's not like here today, gone tomorrow. It's almost like this is the energy of this is what's maturing, right? Because when the seeds get planted in the right place, the swords then can become that Ace of Wands in a way that is integrated into the heart space. And it facilitates this release so that we're not left with the 10 of Wands. We're actually maturing into the Knight of Wands because we know what to let go of, because we understand what is most important. We can hone in on that. And this Four of Pentacles and Ace of Pentacles, we're not withholding for the right things. We're planting the right seeds in the first place. And that's the shift. That's the shift collectively. planting the right seeds in the first place. So this Three of Wands, Spirit, can you please clarify this Three of Wands for my creative collective? Six of Wands. I'm almost seeing, I'm hearing final curtain call. Like, it's like this way of being. It's, and you know, we've been feeling that for a long time. So it's not like it's like, I'm going to be so subversive and new and tell you all of it. No, it's not like that, because this is, we've understood that this is coming, but I feel like this is more of a value shift that's taking place. This is like illuminating something that's happening well below the surface. In terms of our creative capacity as a collective, not just the collective here, but like broadly speaking. So we have the Three of Wands, the Six of Wands, and all of the cards apparently. So the cards that jumped out were these. So Two of Pentacles, the Seven of Swords. Oh, I'll just use all of them. Okay. So we have the Two of Pentacles, the Seven of Swords, and the Two of Swords. Yeah, it's like this cause and effect. So fascinating to me that the cause is this truth that was planted in the wrong place. And the effect is this, like the effect through all of this. So I'm seeing this here as one vignette, and then it's sort of bookended by this Seven of Swords and Two of Pentacles. I do feel like we've had to really balance our view of ourselves and others, because we, you know, how do I word this, Spirit? It's like, this is on one hand adaptability, but this is also a sense of like, I don't know which thing I need to value more. Do I choose myself or do I choose other people? Because either way, it's going to be something that takes. Either way, there's no winning. And that's this Five of Swords mentality, right? And it's not just like, this isn't a me thing. This is like what I see when I look out. And that's where it's like the meditation on that energy from today, and just things I've been seeing in, you know, the news that comes across when I do log into my social media, which is more so lately, but like, it's just not like the news that comes up. It's like, I'm seeing this turn towards community, this need, not just for like community as in, oh, we gather in this park for this group that we do every week. It's like, what does the fabric and fiber of it in your bones mean to you? What does it mean to you? Not everyone cares about community in the same way or sees it in the same way, which is a good thing. That's valuable. But if you didn't have access to your cell phone, if you didn't have access to the internet, or your cell phone, if all of that was gone, because that's what happened today for a lot of people across the country. So if you had no internet and you had no way of communicating with people and you had no landline with which to communicate with them, what would you do? Who would you want to talk to? Who would suddenly, like this happened in, you know, this happened, I think it was 2004. And there was this massive blackout of energy, like the power went out for a couple days. It was in the summer of 2004 in the Niagara area. One of the generators went, and it was like the power went out for days. So I took I took the tent that we had at my mother's house, and I went and took it to my friend's house, and we camped out in her backyard. And you know, that was so amazing. And it's like, you could just see people were gathering, they were playing, they were engaging with one another completely differently. So it's like doing more of those things without the need for some kind of negative event precipitating that, and just understanding that, is it that people aren't fitting? Is it that people have not been a fit? Or is it that the systems that you're trying to make the energy fit into are the things that tint or color the energy that you hope to see there, so that it never will fit? Like, is that what's happening? Because, you know, some people might say like, and, you know, I've been in this place too, where it's like, you have to be very protective of your energy and all these things. And that's not wrong. You have to honor yourself. Absolutely. But if are you seeing the container, the system? It's like, the way you look at it is, if you have a blue bowl and you put water into the blue bowl, the water will look blue, even though the water is not. The water is clear at its core. Now I'm thirsty. Damn it. Anyways, but the water will be blue, right? And it's not blue, it's clear. So it's like we're doing that with our beliefs about collective and community and all of that coming together. And I really saw that prominently today. So it's just, and it's not that we have to change that overnight, because you can't, it's not a comfortable thing to change systems overnight. And I don't think that it's meant to. That's not what peace is, right? That's not peaceful. That's too much, I think. It would be ideal to have specific things work out in specific ways, but so collectively speaking, that is never, it's not a smooth or seamless transition because it's not the world that we live in, right? So nonetheless, so we have this cause, right? This cause, this Ace of Swords, this truth, and then the effect here, right? Two of Swords, which, is representative of it, a need to go within. How ironic for the effect. But what comes of that, though, is the High Priestess, the Sun, and the Devil. So it's like this, like seeing things for what they really are, seeing things for what they really are. And it's almost like the light of the sun just burns away at and out this sort of, this manipulative stories that we tell ourselves. Like I almost see this devil energy as being like the systems that we work within, telling us things about ourselves that have us believe that we're small and would have us believe that we're not capable or connected, or that the stories that it even tells about other people, right? Like and the ways that connects to us, like and then how that either it almost like it's like an offering, almost like it's like I'm hearing deal with the devil, but it's like the way that you can get into those connections, you can get into those engagements with others because you feel like the stories that you've been told by systems, these Five of Swords, like, oh, this type of person is more desirable than that type of person. This side of the tracks is better than this one. And we don't do that anymore with redlining because it's ridiculous and so racist. But I was looking at something, I think it's Queers for Climate Justice, the Instagram. They had something and they talked about how it's now done with trees. And I was like, yeah, it totally is. Like we still do it. We still do these things in our systems that separate, people in these weird ways. So it's like even looking at things like that seems like the banality of trees, like landscaping, right? But is that being used to connect people, and who gets to belong at parks? Who gets to belong in green spaces and in public spaces, and who doesn't, right? And I feel like I don't know why this is so loud. It could just be from today and just thinking about community and connectivity and what does it mean? Like, who do you think of if you couldn't make a call for the next 48 hours, because that's how long they're saying it's like, they don't know for sure when it's going to be back up. Like, imagine that. My cell phone is a brick. There's no purpose to it for potentially the next 48 hours to 72 hours, however long. They said it could be days, right? So it's just like, who do you want to call the most in that moment? What do you want to talk about? What becomes the most important? Are you relieved? But then after a certain amount of time, what happens, right? Again, I have access. The internet provider here at the house is different from myself. So yay for that. But like, what happens at that point if you didn't have those things, right? And I think that we, they said in the States that with the amount of nuclear power plants that close down and the population, there will be rolling blackouts over the summer in some areas because the capacity for, or the need for power there, and the capacity is not an even match, like it's mismatched. So there could be situations like that. So it's like thinking about that and coming together in ways that are like before the need is that dire, right? Like, what does that mean for us? And this again is something that we've been kind of grappling with internally, but this is this beautiful blend. Like I'm seeing this beautiful blend of like what we would see as like 3D and 5D, right? The sun is joyous, but it's also 3D joy. The High Priestess is 5D joy. And it's like they're coming together. They're coming together in this really beautifully embodied way where it's like we're seeing past. We're seeing past, we're seeing through, we're seeing beyond these old stories that we may not have up to this point because there was a reason for that, right? We can make meaning that way so that we're not left at this bereft sea where there's like 6-foot waves and we have a dinghy, right? It's like we're making meaning of that so that the story isn't one of being overtaken, but the one of our overcoming. And I feel like that's a different story altogether. And I think less than an overcoming, right? But a coming through together. And I think that's the more important part of this. So I'm just going to pull some clarifier cards here. lot of community message today. But again, if it's something that is less about community, you can take this in the micro as well. Like you can apply it, scale it down. You can apply it that way too, and say that this is just relative to like friendships and stories that we tell about our, who we connect with, who's easy to connect with, and why. Like, is that a story that we're telling, or is that how we are? And if that's how we are we going to the places that it's easy to connect with people in, right? Are we going to those places and places within ourselves, not just spaces, but places within ourselves? Are we going to those places? So, speaking your word, voice. Yeah, that's that truth, right? The Ace of Swords. Oh my goodness. I feel like that's a big deal. A big deal. Speaking your word, voice, and then attraction and magnetism. That's where it's almost like this sort of alignment of what we dreamed of, like how we felt, all the possibility we might have felt when we were kids, right? Like that openness, that just, kids, like one of my favorite things about kids is that they just like, they light up the world because they do everything, that they're so excited for everything. And it's like they're not just excited a little bit, like they're excited with their whole person. It's the most brilliant thing. And I feel like we lose that along the way. And it's like we're reconnecting to this part of our voice and this part of us that is present when we articulate our truths, not individually, just because this is like bigger. These creative unconscious readings to me are about collective, right? So they're more collectively oriented. So it's just like this truth, right? Like I feel like this is like the truth, and then this is the cause, and then this is the effect, right? The cause is the magnetism. The cause is this attractive energy, and not attractive as in like, hey, good looking. Like it's not like that. It's like this energy that's pulling in something new, that's a possibility, that's a new possibility for everyone collectively, because we're in this space of, it's like a magnetic pull, because how can it not be, right? Yeah. And then this voice, right? Like this, speaking your word, like there's, this energy feels so powerful and so good. Like it's almost like this dawn, dawning of a new, I want to say that the dawn of a new era. Like it sounds so intense and dramatic. But this reading is huge already, so I appreciate if you're watching so far and have gotten this far. I'm going to pull a postcard from the universe, or postcard from spirit, sorry, and then I'm going to pull a life loves you affirmation. So we're going to pull a postcard from spirit first. With love is on the back there. Okay. Dearest you, selfless giving is an elixir so sweet and life-giving and amazing that it should be customary for everyday living. Right now, generosity is being asked of you. Let go of a debt, release an obligation, or do a solid kindness to someone for no other reason than as an exercise of the heart. You will be surprised how quickly a generous heart is repaid. We know it often doesn't happen in the immediate exchange, so temper your expectations. Know that life has an uncanny way of sending miracles seemingly unrelated to your kindness, yet interconnected in magical ways. The more you act from generosity, the bigger your heart grows, and the more love and abundance you will experience. We also know that someone could be entering your life with a generous offer for you. Take it and trust that you are worthy and deserving of it. You have to receive, not just give. We love you so much over here. Yeah, I like that a lot. Like, what does that mean? What if, like, spirit is offering something to the collective? Like, what does that even look like? Like, how cool does that look? Like, we think of an offer as something that applies to us individually, but, like, what about the offer that, like, what does an offer look like to an entire collective, right? Oh my God. I'm hearing, like, first contact, like, da-da-da. I don't even know. Who knows that could possibly be, like, with the way everything's been going. I can do it. Trust. Yes. I can do it. Trust. In times of trouble, remember this. Who you think you are cannot handle this challenge, but who you really are can and will. Yeah. A lot of community today. A lot of community. How we cultivate it, how we grow it, where we find it, and how we fit, and what does it look like to be without pretense, where it's like, it doesn't matter what you create. It doesn't matter how perfectly you show up. It doesn't matter. What matters more is that you're planting your truth in the right place so that other people get to benefit from it. Don't go to the hardware store for milk. And trust that you're worth the joy that these represent more than the stories that you've been told that keep you bound. Whoa. Right? So that is your creative unconscious reading for July 9th, my darlings. So if this resonated, give it a like and subscribe. It helps me to continue to grow this channel, and I really appreciate that you're here. So thank you so much for that. And also there are other ways you can connect with me on the channel, so do check that out. But if this is where we part, my darling creative collective, my creative unconscious collective, I hope that wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, it finds you very, very well. Take care, my darlings.